My name's Claire Slatter and I teach politics and governance at the University of the South Pacific in the School of Government, Development and International Affairs.
My name is Peter Sipelli. I am 39 years of age. I currently work for the College of Medicine, part of the Fiji National University. I'm a project manager. So I work in the area of using art as a tool for health. I also am a gay activist. I'm a poet. I'm just a local guy that's trying to make sense of the world.
I'm Andy Fong Choi, and I'm one of the two Deputy Secretaries General at the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, and I cover economic governance and security. So with respect to the questions you're going to ask me, I'll be wearing my security hat.
Well, I'm one of those oldies who was involved in the anti-nuclear movement back in the early 70s. So yes, we knew about nuclear weapons and their destructive capability and their potential to destroy the Earth several times over back in the 70s. And there were meetings that were being held in the Pacific around opposition to the French nuclear tests that were being conducted in the Pacific, and also to missile testing in the Northern Pacific. And we had most of the big peace movements represented at those meetings, like the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. So yes, there was a lot of information around and concern about the issue in the 70s. And this was still in the era of the Cold War. That all seemed to dissipate after the ending of the Cold War, but I'm glad to see that there's a resurgence of activism and organising around what to do with nuclear weapons, because they remain a major, major threat to humankind and to the Earth, to the survival of the planet, the survival of the human race.
I think the nuclear weapon discussion for me began very early, and I think through film and through celluloid products. I was aware from a very young age what had happened in Hiroshima, and knew that, wow, that's the impact of nuclear warfare. And then I think it would have been the late 80s towards the early 90s. At the time I was probably in my mid to late teens, and there was quite a lot of discussion at national level here in Fiji and the Pacific, led by people at Greenpeace Pacific. And they were a dying group. The Nuclear Free and Independent Pacific movement began in the 70s, and they were on its last legs at that time. They were raising concern over the transport of nuclear waste through the South Pacific by the Japanese. And it was quite topical at the time. There was a lot of media coverage. We saw quite a lot of protests in the city. I remember, goodness, I might have been like 19, and I might have been trying to get a scholarship to go to USP, and seeing people like Penny Moore and them carry coffins through Suva and saying, if something had happened, like the ship had an accident and there was a spillage, we'd all be quite affected in the Pacific. So yeah, I think I've been aware from a very young age of the impact of nuclear weapons.
When I was growing up, there was quite a strong anti-nuclear movement in the Pacific, but also in Fiji. So that was sort of my first, I suppose, sense of awareness of nuclear issues, and understanding about the nuclear testing in the South Pacific, particularly in French Polynesia. And then when I joined the Secretariat in the 90s, it was about the time that France basically began to, they started nuclear testing again. And it was an issue that was taken very seriously by the Forum. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Forum has a long history in terms of anti-nuclear testing, and it was in fact one of the key reasons that the Forum as an organisation was formed. So when France resumed testing, I think it was in 1995, the Forum leaders issued a very strong statement against France's resumption of nuclear testing. And in fact, they suspended France from its post-forum dialogue status, which I think for quite a consensus conservative organisation, that was a very big step. And also a number of Forum members joined in the case that was taken to the International Court on the legality of nuclear testing.
I mean, I think it's important to understand it's not just a ban on any more production of nuclear weapons. My understanding from checking on the net is that there's something like 22,000 nuclear weapons that are still in existence. But why should there be a ban on any further production? The capacity of the nuclear weapons that already exist, as I said, is large enough to, or destructive enough to, destroy the world, the Earth, many times over. So and why would one want to continue to produce such, mega destructive weaponry? But there's also a real danger that, particularly in the present times, when we have, armed and extremely dangerous extremist groups, there's a real concern about not just states, rogue states, perhaps using nuclear weapons, without any concern for what the outcome might be. But there is a real danger of it falling into the hands of non-state actors with, very destructive intentions. So that would probably be my answer.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, really, we have seen through history that nuclear weapons impact and affect and destroy people and the environment. The fact that we're still having this discussion now in 2014 is stupid. Nuclear weapons shouldn't be used as weapons. It shouldn't be included as weapons in warfare. I just think that we've come so far. We know so much, and we've done nothing. We're still having the same discussion that they were having in the 60s. That Penny Moore and those people that were part of that movement in the 90s. Now, as we approach the end of the 20 teens, we're still having the discussion. I think people must make incredible movement to end chemical and nuclear warfare.
I think for the, being a Pacific Islander and a history of nuclear testing, and that's, as I've mentioned, both in French Polynesia, but there's also been nuclear tests in the Marshall Islands, parts of Australia, and in Christmas Island. And I think, when we look back when these nuclear tests were conducted, I think there was a lot of ignorance about the Pacific. And there was a perception that it was safe to conduct nuclear testing in the Pacific because it was just wide open ocean spaces, which we, of course, in the Pacific realize that is not true. And I think the importance of nuclear testing, not only, I think, for world peace and disarmament, but both the personal and the environment impact of nuclear testing. And if we look at the personal impacts, I mean, the studies are now, only relatively recently have been released about the health effects of nuclear testing in Mororoa. But also if we look at what has happened in the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the impact of the nuclear testing on the health of the people of Marshall Islands is intergenerational. I mean, I think we're probably in the third generation and they're still suffering the effects of nuclear testing. And the forum leaders have, for many years called for the United States to basically find a just solution to the situation in Marshall Islands. But also, if we look at environment impacts, we look at Rongelap, which is where a number of nuclear tests were conducted, and that is uninhabitable. So, I mean, the obvious implications for people not being able to return to their homeland.